You've probably felt it before. Not as a theory, not as some late-night idea pulled from a science fiction movie, more like a quiet pressure behind ordinary life, a sense that the world is solid, yet somehow not complete. You wake up, move through familiar rooms, speak to familiar people, and follow rules nobody remembers agreeing to. Gravity pulls, time moves forward, bodies age, choices create consequences. Everything behaves as though reality were following instructions. Most people never question those instructions. Why would they? A fish doesn't spend its morning wondering who designed water. It swims, hunts, hides, survives. Water feels less like an environment and more like existence itself. You're in a similar position. The laws surrounding you are so constant that they disappear from view. You don't see the structure. You see what the structure produces. But imagine noticing a seam, a small one at first, a pattern repeated too perfectly, a limit that behaves suspiciously like the processing limit of a machine, a universe that constantly organizes, compresses, stores, corrects, and transmits information. Suddenly, an uncomfortable question appears. What if reality isn't merely made of matter? What if matter is what information looks like when the code is running? Look at anything around you. A chair, a window, a phone, a city skyline. Before any of those things became physical, they existed as information. Someone imagined a shape, calculated a structure, chose a material, and arranged separate pieces according to a plan. Wood didn't wake up one morning and decide to become a table. Steel didn't randomly organize itself into a bridge. Form followed information. Matter obeyed an invisible design. Now carry that thought further. Your body also began as information. Long before you could speak, remember, or dream, a set of biological instructions was already unfolding. Cells divided without asking for permission. Organs formed in precise locations. Nerves found their paths. A heart began beating before there was a conscious you to command it. Something knew what to build, when to build it, and how each part should relate to the whole. Science calls much of that information genetic code, and the phrase is more revealing than it first appears. Code isn't the object itself. Code is the instruction that allows the object to emerge. A recipe isn't a meal, but the meal takes shape because the recipe organizes possibility. In the same way, physical reality may be less like a pile of independent objects and more like the visible output of deeper rules, rules so consistent that atoms, stars, cells, and minds can keep appearing from the same underlying grammar. Ancient thinkers approached this mystery without computers, processors, or digital language, yet many arrived near the same edge. Plato described ordinary reality as shadows mistaken for truth. Hindu philosophy spoke of Maya, the veil that makes appearance feel absolute. Buddhist traditions warn that the world we cling to isn't as fixed as it seems. Different cultures use different metaphors: dream, illusion, shadow, cosmic play. But the whisper underneath them remains strangely familiar. What you see may be real enough to experience, yet not fundamental enough to explain itself. And once reality starts looking less like a collection of things and more like a language being spoken, another question follows naturally. Languages have patterns, programs have limits, codes leave fingerprints. So if the universe is running on information, where would its fingerprints appear? Nature looks wild from a distance. Storms tear through coastlines, stars collapse, forests burn and grow again. Yet beneath all that apparent chaos, reality keeps returning to order. Snowflakes form symmetry. Planets settle into repeating paths. Crystals build themselves in precise geometric arrangements. Living systems preserve patterns, copy instructions, repair damage, and remove what they no longer need. Chaos is real, yes, but so is an almost stubborn tendency toward structure. Here's where things become interesting. Efficient systems compress information. A map doesn't reproduce every grain of sand on a beach. It keeps only what helps you navigate. A song file can be compressed, because repeated information doesn't need to be stored again and again. A well-written program removes unnecessary steps because wasted instructions consume power. Efficiency isn't just about speed. Efficiency is what limited systems do when they need to achieve more with less. Now look back at the universe. Symmetry itself can be understood as a kind of compression. When one side mirrors another, less unique information is needed to describe the whole. Repeating patterns reduce complexity. Stable laws allow reality to reuse the same instructions everywhere. An electron doesn't require a new rule each time one appears. Gravity doesn't reinvent itself on every planet. One principle can govern countless events, like a single line of code generating 1,000 shapes. Even the limits of physics begin to look different through that lens. Light has a maximum speed. Information can't travel instantly across unlimited distance. Time slows near enormous concentrations of mass. A computer under a heavy load also slows because the processor can only handle so much at once. None of this proves that the universe is literally a laptop humming in some higher room. Reality could be far stranger than any machine you understand. Still, the analogy raises a serious possibility. What appears to be a law of nature may also be a boundary of computation. Then, there's the missing information. Most of the universe cannot be directly seen, yet its effects seem necessary to explain how galaxies hold together and why cosmic expansion behaves as it does. Physicists use terms such as dark matter and dark energy because something is clearly influencing the visible universe, even though its nature remains uncertain. Suppose visible matter is only the rendered surface, like the image on a screen. In that case, the invisible majority might not be empty at all. It could be structure, background data, or some deeper architecture the inhabitants of the system can feel but cannot directly observe. Once you begin seeing reality this way, the universe stops looking like a finished object and starts looking like an active process. Something is being updated, information is being preserved, patterns are being optimized, errors are being resisted, and if code can be detected through the behavior of the system, perhaps consciousness isn't standing outside that system. Perhaps consciousness is one of its most advanced expressions. Your brain already performs an impossible-looking trick every waking second. Light enters your eyes as signals, vibrations enter your ears, pressure touches your skin. Your nervous system converts all of it into electrical activity, and from that activity emerges a world. Color, distance, warmth, memory, fear, beauty. You never experience reality raw. You experience a model assembled inside consciousness. Think about what that means. A red sunset isn't delivered directly into your mind. Your brain interprets wavelengths and builds the experience of red. A voice is air pressure until your nervous system turns it into meaning. Even the feeling of being inside a body depends on signals being gathered, organized, and presented to awareness. The world feels immediate, but your access to it is always mediated. Reality reaches you as information. Now technology is beginning to imitate that process. Images can be generated that never passed through a camera. Voices can be reconstructed without the original speaker. Digital environments can respond to movement, choice, and attention. Biological structures can be mapped with increasing detail, and simulated systems can reproduce complex behavior when the right architecture is preserved. Each breakthrough weakens an old assumption that life, mind, and reality belong only to the physical forms in which you first encountered them. Sooner or later, the question won't be whether a machine can copy a voice or generate a face. The question will be whether a mind can be reconstructed so completely that it wakes inside another form. Suppose every memory, fear, habit, preference, and neural connection could be mapped. A digital being opens its eyes and remembers your childhood. It recognizes your family. It carries your unfinished thoughts. It insists that it is you. Would consciousness have moved, or would a perfect copy simply believe it had? No easy answer exists, because the mystery isn't only technological. Nobody has fully explained what consciousness is. Perhaps it emerges when information becomes complex enough to observe itself. Perhaps the brain produces awareness the way fire produces heat. Or perhaps awareness is more fundamental, and the brain merely receives or organizes it. Either way, humanity is moving toward a dangerous threshold. Creation is beginning to understand the mechanisms of creation, and that threshold changes the meaning of power. Controlling land makes you a ruler. Controlling weapons makes you dangerous. Controlling information makes you influential. But controlling the rules beneath matter, time, and consciousness would be something else entirely. You wouldn't be moving pieces across the board anymore. You'd be rewriting what the board allows. Imagine living inside a sealed room your entire life. Every wall is unbreakable. Every door is locked. You learn to survive within the space, decorate it, measure it, and pass stories about what may exist outside. Then one day a small panel opens in the wall. Behind it, you discover wires connected to the lights, the temperature, the locks, even the clock. Until that moment, those things felt like laws. Now they look like settings. Hacking reality would mean finding that panel. It wouldn't simply mean understanding physics more deeply. Understanding a rule and changing a rule are very different achievements. You can understand gravity and still fall. You can calculate time and still age. You can study death and still face it. Real control would begin when knowledge becomes access, when the observer can reach beneath the visible world and alter the instructions that produce it. At that point, miracles would become engineering. Matter could be rearranged without ordinary tools. Distance might lose its authority. Aging could become editable. Minds could move between bodies or environments. Entire realities could be generated from code, populated with conscious beings who experience their world as naturally as you experience yours. To anyone trapped within the old rules, such abilities would appear divine, not because the person had become morally perfect, but because the difference between a god and a creature often comes down to who can change the environment and who must obey it. Yet, there's a darker side hiding inside the fantasy. Unlimited power doesn't automatically produce wisdom. A child given access to the controls of a city could cause disaster without meaning to. A government with access to reality's code could turn existence itself into territory. A corporation could place ownership around life, memory, identity, or time. Someone might promise immortality while quietly deciding which version of you gets preserved, modified, copied, or erased. Even success could create a strange emptiness. Games lose their tension when every challenge can be bypassed. Stories collapse when nothing can be lost. Life has meaning partly because choices close doors, time runs forward, and consequences are real. Remove every limit, and you may not create paradise. You may erase the conditions that make courage, loyalty, sacrifice, and growth possible. So perhaps becoming God isn't the final discovery. Perhaps the deeper discovery is realizing why power must be restrained. The code of reality may be the greatest treasure any intelligence could uncover, but it could also be the final test of that intelligence. Can a species touch the machinery of creation without turning creation into a toy? Now one day, humanity may find the seam, not a metaphorical seam, but a real one, a measurable opening into the structure beneath physics, consciousness, and matter. Someone may discover that the universe truly behaves like computation. Someone may prove that information carries physical weight. Someone may learn to render minds, bodies, or entire worlds from patterns alone. And when that happens, the question won't be whether humanity has become powerful enough to play God. The question will be whether humanity has become wise enough not to. So don't let the idea end as entertainment. Let it turn your attention inward. Every day, you already rewrite a small part of reality through what you choose: build, teach, forgive, destroy, and protect. You may not control the code beneath the stars, but you influence the world experienced by every consciousness you touch. Start there. Learn to carry power without cruelty, knowledge without arrogance, and mystery without fear. Because when the door finally opens, and it may open sooner than anyone expects, the most important code won't be hidden inside the universe. It'll be written into the kind of being you chose to become.